Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are so excited that you are here today. I feel like we are welcoming children's literature royalty to the show today. Our guest is a 3-time Newbery Honor winning author, and she's here to talk about her latest book, The Third Mushroom. Our guest today is Jennifer Holm. Before Jennifer comes to the show, I'd love to ask you to check out my children's book. It hasn't won a Newbery Honor Award, but it has received a lot of great acclaim. The Great Maritini is my first picture book, and it has been called one of the top 7 books that teach kids kindness by childrenspublishing.com. It's also received Story Monster approval, and that's really great. But what I really hope is that it receives your approval and your kids' approval. We would love for you to add The Great Maritini to your family library. The Great Maritini tells the story of Sam, an aspiring and some would say clumsy magician. He has a lot of grit. He makes a lot of mistakes, and that's really fun. But he also has a lot of grit, and he sticks with it. He makes his dream come true, and he learns how to perform amazing transformations on stage. But it's on a journey from one stage to another with no one around to applaud that the Great Maritini discovers that the greatest transformation of all is transforming feelings of caring into action to help another human being. Like I said, I would love for this book to receive your approval and your children's approval, and that you would add it to your family library. There's lots of great ways to experience the Great Maritini. You can read the Great Maritini for free via Kindle Unlimited. You can also order either the e-edition or the print edition on Amazon.com. And if you go to greatmaritini.com, you can order a giant bilingual autographed copy of the book, and you receive it directly from me. The name of the book is The Great Maritini. Find out more at Amazon.com or at greatmaritini.com. Joining us right now from right outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, she is a 3-time Newbery Honor winning author. Woo! Welcome to the show, the author of The Third Mushroom, Jennifer Holm. Jennifer, how are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you here. 3-time Newbery Honor winning author. That's high praise. That's really up there in the children's literature world.
It's completely insane. My mom is very proud of me.
Well, she should be. She should be. So tell us about The Third Mushroom.
Well, The Third Mushroom is it's a standalone book, but it's a sequel to a novel I wrote a few years ago called The 14th Goldfish. And in The 14th Goldfish, a girl named Ellie, she's 12 years old and is in middle school. What happens is she lives with her mom, and her grandfather is a bit of a mad scientist. And he figures out a way to reverse aging, and he overdoes it a little bit and uses himself as a guinea pig, and he turns himself into a middle schooler, and he gets arrested trying to break back into his lab. And so the police release him into the custody of his daughter, because he's a kid. So he has to go back and live with his daughter, who's a grown up, and his granddaughter. And so it's all about that big question, if we could find a way to reverse aging, would that be a good thing in science, or would that be a bad thing? Yeah. And so, at the end of that book, Melvin, who's the grandpa, he kind of goes off on a little road trip, and the book, The Third Mushroom, picks up, when he returns home. He gets tired of traveling on the road, and he comes back home, and he lives with Ellie and his daughter again. And, he's like a typical teenager, he sticks his dirty laundry into his granddaughter's laundry basket because he doesn't want to do his laundry. But he's really like a 70-year-old, in a middle schooler's body. So.
I can relate. You know, I'm pretty close to his age, so I can relate. And it's funny, as you were talking about the grandfather going back and being at the same age as his granddaughter, I'm incredibly close to my niece these days, who is 15, and we skate together, we play hockey together, but we're very much, old man and young girl. I can imagine what kind of havoc would happen if I ended up waking up one morning and I was back in middle school.
Yeah, because, he's not, he's been through puberty. He's not psyched to go through it again. He's eating through everything. He's getting pimples again. It is sort of that one phase in your life that most people don't want to necessarily repeat. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I think that's a really great kind of lesson for a teenager for a middle school kid to read as they're going through this really difficult phase in their life. And, I know, when I was a middle schooler, I thought I was the only one who was miserable. And I think a lot of kids, they think, oh, I'm the only one who's miserable. Everybody else knows everything. And it would be really, really helpful for them to realize that, no, this is tough for everyone.
Yeah, it is. And I have a 15-year-old myself, and it's actually more painful to watch, your kid go through it, for sure, for the parents out there. It's just, because you can kind of see what's coming. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the hardest things in middle school is the whole concept of friendship, about, finding your place in this new world. Because usually, typically you've gone from an elementary school where you might have a close crew of friends, and then you're thrust into this, usually typically a bigger pond of new kids, and you've got hormones raging through your body, and you're not quite sure. It's a time when you make new friends. Maybe you feel slightly romantic. And so the book is also just a real really, the third mushroom brings up the question of friendship a lot. Mm-hmm. And also this whole concept of mistakes, making mistakes. And it feels a little bit like when I'm with kids today, they're just so nervous about making mistakes. Mm-hmm. They want the first draft of something they write to be their only draft, and they fear failure so much. And I think the one thing about science is, in science, failure ultimately leads to success, and it's just part of the process. And so our character in the book, Ellie, who's just a year older, starts to kind of learn about that whole process, that making mistakes it's actually okay, and this is the time in your life to do it, for sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that this is a new phenomenon, that this fear of making mistakes is sort of new to this generation?
I feel definitely. It really feels like, this is just my personal opinion. It does feel like, to this generation, it feels a little newer. Mm-hmm. I'm a child of the 70s, so I think things, like sports, things have changed a bit. It was a bit more cutthroat in the old days, but you did kind of learn I guess the one good thing about that was you learned failure younger and harder, which was not a good feeling, of course. But I do feel like some kids today are learning that concept a little bit later in life. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm.
One of the most bizarre things for me, I coached at a very competitive high school. I coached a soccer program, and it was very competitive, and there were tons of kids who went out, and we could only have 20 kids on the team. So there was, failure there, and then in the games, and the wins and losses and championships and whatever. And when my son was 7 or 8 years old, and he decided he wanted to play soccer, and the local team learned that I had this background in coaching, and they said, "Oh, we need you to come and coach." And so I said, well, great, I'll give it a shot. And then I found out, to my horrors, that they didn't keep score. And I said,
yeah, me too.
How does that work? And they say, "Oh no, we don't want the kids to feel bad." And I'm like, "But the kids are keeping score. What are you talking about?"
Exactly. So the kids are so smart. They are, of course. I had the same experience. My son played, soccer for 1 year, and Yes, all of the children are, of course, keeping score. And that's kind of we're setting them up for failure a little bit by trying to soften the blow of failure.
Right. Yeah. It really is true. That's so important for us and for kids to understand that you don't want to fail, but it's part of life. And the most important thing is learning how to pick yourself up after you fail.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is the most important lesson, because they are going to have undoubtedly many different careers. They're not going to necessarily, go into whatever they think they're going to be in middle school is what they're going to be in high school, is what they're going to be in college. Yeah, it's really about learning to manage that expectations about changing things up. And I think that helps you to cope much better.
Now, you were talking about changing goals and dreams and things like that. Did you always envision yourself being an author of middle grade novels?
Nope. No, I mean, I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania, and I'm one of 5 children, and I'm the only girl. I'm the middle child. And so I came from a big family. And my dad was a pediatrician and my mom was a nurse. So I actually kind of came from a pretty medical family, and more of a family where they were very kind of, jobs were more practical. And in fact, like my mom and dad had been in the Navy prior, being into medicine. So the whole concept of going into the arts was not really on the horizon from their childhood. And so it wasn't even in the horizon in where I grew up. And so after college, I moved to New York City, and I actually kind of just fell into working in advertising, and I became a broadcast producer for an ad agency called Ogilvy and Mather. And so I basically worked in television. I made commercials for Hershey's Kisses and Huggies diapers and Dove soap. And I really enjoyed doing that. That was super fun. And I slowly started writing my first book at night, and it took 3 years. So it was a very, very slow process, actually.
And now that you are a 3-time Newbery Honor winning author, and you're not making commercials for Huggies, how does it feel? Did you find your happy spot?
Yes, it feels really good. So in fact, but it's funny. So now, ironically, my life is kind of, so I've been a full-time writer now since about 2001, for middle grade and for elementary school children. And now I'm slightly, sliding back into the film side, because the 14th Goldfish, is in development for an animated movie.
Ooh.
Which is exciting. And the director, or the writer who is, going to be writing the script is Ted Melfi, who did Hidden Figures, that great movie that was out about 2 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun. I'm slightly edging back into that world. So it's funny how things, kind of come full circle.
Yeah, and I imagine, though, but you're edging back into it in a very different way.
Exactly. Yes. So such a different part of it, for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine too that the world of film and video has changed, a great deal.
Yes. I mean, I got out of it in, right around 2001. I was still producing, and I was shooting everything actually on film. So.
I was mentioning my niece earlier. We went to see the whatever the latest Avengers movies was, and the very next day we had an opportunity. We're at a family gathering together, and one of the guests there actually he's a digital artist, and he does a lot of the special effects, and he worked on the Black Panther and the Avengers, and so we sat down and was explaining how it takes 3 or 4 weeks to do the art for 30 seconds of the movie. And, so we're just fascinated by that process, and not only what's possible, but just how many people are involved in it.
Yeah, so many people. I am kind of cognizant of that, but the technology has changed so much from when I was in it. It's come so far. It's like magic now.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned the awards that you received. Tell us a little bit about some of those award-winning books that are in your library.
Yeah. So, my Newbery Honor books are mostly inspired by my family history. I really have very interesting, both my mom's side and my dad's side, family history. My, father's family was from, Southwest Washington, and they're Finnish American. And so my first book, which is called Our Only May Amelia, from HarperCollins, is based on, my dad's family. And it's about a girl who's growing up in the wilderness in Southwest Washington, and she's Finnish American at the turn of the century in, 1899. And I learned very quickly, like, if you write a book about your dad's side of the family, you should probably have written a book about your mom's side of the family first. So in order to compensate for that, I wrote 2 books about my mom's side of the family. She grew up in New Jersey and, is Italian American. And so the other book is Penny from Heaven, and that takes place in 1950 New Jersey. And then the third book is inspired by her grandmother, my great grandmother, who's from Key West, and that takes place in the Great Depression, and it's called Turtle in Paradise.
Wow. Wow. How did the other than the fact that your mom's side of the family is upset that they weren't mentioned first, how is that sharing? Because I think a lot of times, we have these great stories in our lives and in our families, and I think sometimes people are kind of hesitant to share those families. Not that everybody's going to write a Newbery Award-winning book, but just being able to share our family stories is so, especially with our kids, it's such a wonderful activity.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially for Penny from Heaven, which takes place in the 1950s, I felt really driven to write that book because I grew up with my mother's Italian side of the family. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, and the relatives were all New Jersey. And, but what happened was I met my husband in my mid-20s, and just before I met him, that older generation all died. They all started dying. Mm. And so he actually never met any of my aunts or uncles. That whole side of the family had died when I met him. And so I found myself just telling him all these stories, and, when we would have Thanksgiving at, the Italian family's house, like, nobody really cared about the turkey. It was, everything else was amazing, all this great Italian food. And he had not had a similar experience. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, that whole way of life, it is dying. Mm-hmm. And I'm the only one that remembers it, lived through it. And I wanted to be able to sort of tell him and my kids someday. So I started writing everything down, and because I wanted to remember all these wonderful little things. So yeah, I think it's super important to write stuff down. Or in my dad's side of the family, they're real historians, and we have quite a few oral histories, and they would tape record people when they were in their old age and ask them about their childhood. And in a strange way, elderly people are pretty clear as a bell about the earlier years in their life. They might not know what happened last week, but they'll remember what it was like when they were 10 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the things when my mom was, dealing with Parkinson's, she wouldn't remember us, and she wouldn't remember what she had for breakfast or for lunch, or if she had it. But boy, she could remember all the different concerts that she went to, and the singers that she loved, and the different things that happened in school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've had the same experience.
Yeah. So tell us, what kind of advice, because obviously you're visiting kids, you have these books, and you're visiting schools. Kids are going to be asking you for advice, and, especially kids who picture themselves as being writers. What kind of advice do you give to those kids?
So in sort of the other side of my writing life, I make graphic novels with my brother Matt. We do the Baby Mouse series and the Squish series and the Sunny series. And ironically, I've kind of pulled some writing advice from doing those books over the years, because writers, grown-up writers, we get writer's block all the time, and we get just as anxious as, students do when they're trying to do a book report. And so what I've started doing before I write anything now, and I tell the kids to do this, is just get a piece of scrap paper. Say if you want to become a writer and you want to work on a story, or maybe you have to do something for school, before you write a single word, get a scrap paper and just start doodling out your ideas. Just doodle them out. Just whatever. You don't have to be a good artist. Just start doodling any ideas you have. Because we're growing up in a really visual society, kids today. They're on their iPads. They're on their Nintendo DS. And so I think that just having them use as a warm-up exercise, just doodling out what they want to write, kind of then serves as like a nice little roadmap when they finally start putting the words to paper.
Yeah. One of the things that I do these days is, really encourage kids to visualize what they're reading and try to read vividly so they can just picture, what the words are and what the story is. And I guess that's just as important and just as helpful when we're writing, to kind of visualize what it is we're trying to communicate.
Yeah. I kind of make the analogy that back before Google Maps, right? When we were learning to drive, we had to learn how to read a map, right? We had to be able to visualize where we were driving. We could follow a map, big old paper map. And I feel like kids today have lost that skill of like actually looking at a paper map and trying to track visually where they're going, and just doodling something out is they're just drawing a little map for them. Mm-hmm. And it's a helpful aid, I think.
Now, one of the things that would be a really helpful aid, it would have been a helpful aid for me when my son he's 25 now, but when he was younger and, he wouldn't read anything that didn't have pictures in it. And it would be incredibly frustrating for me. And I'd sit there and go, please read something that doesn't have pictures. Could you just remind me and remind other parents out there that reading graphic novels, reading comics, it actually counts as reading?
It counts as such good reading. In fact, graphic novels it's actually a little bit of higher reading because there's more stuff going on. Mm-hmm. Your imagination is in fact more engaged. Your brain's a bit more engaged because you're tracking, first of all, a story, you're tracking dialogue, you're tracking narration. But you're also, your imagination is really engaged because as you go from each cell, you're having to figure out what happens, when you turn the page between each cell. And I think the other thing that's great about graphic novels, it's very close reading and rereading. So kids often say, when I go to a book signing, I just read your book in 5 minutes, because they're standing in line and whipping through it. Mm-hmm. They will read that book 20 times. They'll read it again and again, and they'll get something out of it, and they'll notice something different every time. Mm-hmm. And I just think that graphic novels just really build your reading chops, and it gets them to love reading. And we're trying to get the kids' attention to, pay attention to books, hopefully, and instill a love of reading. And so it's a way to really keep them engaged. Yeah.
And just as you're sitting there thinking and speaking of, noticing different things as you're reading the book over and over and over again, and I've had that experience watching movies, and we encourage parents to read with their kids, no matter what age their kids are. I'm thinking what a blast it would be for a parent and a kid. What a blast it would have been for me to sit down and read the graphic novels with my son and just compare what was jumping out at us from the illustrations and to see, oh wow, you're looking at that same picture, you're seeing it in a different way, and I didn't notice that, and just that experience of having a parent and child help point things out to each other and help each other see different things. What a great experience that could be.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like, just remember, it was just like getting that, that amazing weekend paper with the color funnies, and we'd all fight over it, and everybody could read those and laugh. And I think graphic novels have that still are very enduring in that way.
Yeah. I just remember, I was sharing this with Mark Tatuli, who's the creative Leo. And he's a graphic novelist as well. And I was remembering when I was a kid, there was a huge newspaper strike here in Boston. All the newspapers they just weren't available for a couple of weeks. And every single night, the TV stations would come on and they would read the comic strips that we weren't
hilarious. They're like, what's happening with Dagwood?
Exactly. It was crazy. It was
funny. That's so funny. I love it.
People could live without the news, but they couldn't live without Dagwood and Snoopy.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Well, I think I could talk to you all day long, but I know you have a life. So tell us where folks can connect with you, find out more about you and about all your great books.
Sure. You can find me online at jenniferholm.com. I'm on Twitter at Jenny Holm, JenniHolm. And you can find my books at your independent bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Target, or online.
Awesome. Hey, I've had a great time speaking with you. We want everybody to check out The Third Mushroom and also The 14th Goldfish and all of Jennifer's amazing books, and check out her website, jenniferholm.com. Jennifer, I've had a blast speaking to you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be our friend, G. Brian Benson, coming to us from beautiful Los Angeles. Hey, are you the author of a great children's book? If you are, you've probably discovered that writing a great children's book is probably about the 10th of the work that needs to be done to create a best-selling children's book. Yeah. After you write the book, you have to get into marketing it and selling it. Well, we can't really help you sell it, but we can help you celebrate your book. That's right. We love helping authors celebrate their great children's book. We have a number of ways that you can do that. You can be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Being a guest gives you an opportunity to tell thousands and thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. And the podcast stays up. Well, the original podcast, the first podcast, has been up online for close to 2 years right now. So it's up there for people to see for a long time, and you can post a link to your episode of the podcast on your website. And being a guest in the podcast, it's fun, it's easy, and check this out. It's free. Yeah. We also have the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. We've helped a number of books be discovered and help them lift their profile and really succeed in the marketplace. And of course, you can advertise right here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. So many great ways to help you celebrate your book and to let the world know all about it. If you'd like to know how we can help you celebrate your book, please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Probably the easiest thing to do is for you to click on the contact button. Let us know about your great book. Let us know what you're interested in. We'll send you all the information. Hey, we want to thank Jennifer Holm for being here. Even a 3-time Newbery Honor winning author, she sees the value in spending a little bit of time being on the podcast. We're really grateful that Jennifer spent time with us today. And we're really, really grateful that you would spend time with us today. Thank you so very much. And thank you for helping to make the world a better place. You do that every time you take the time to read to your kids. Hey, I'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.